G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. I'd like to have a little bit of a chat about the Conservative side of politics. They've just lost big time in the excited states of Norte Americano, and it appears that they're collapsing in Australia. Now here in Australia, the Conservative side of politics calls themselves liberal. In air quotes. It's a legacy of Robert Gordon Menzies, who was the longest serving ever Prime Minister in Australia. At the end of the Second World War, Robert Gordon Menzies finally admitted to himself that you could not sell the title Conservative to Australians. You couldn't sell the title Tory to Australians. So he thought really hard, and he said he wanted to start a party called the Liberal Party. And the people he wanted to vote for him was everybody who wanted to have liberty to exploit the land and to make as much money as they possibly could. So here in Australia, the Liberal Party is not the party of the left-wing civil libertarians. Here in Australia, the Liberal Party is the party of the shareholders, of the bosses, of the people who want to exploit the situation, right? Now we have other parties. We have the Labor Party, L-A-B-O-R, and they were founded on the principle of a fair go for the workers and the White Australia policy. Here we are on Aboriginal land, and these half-wits wanted to set up a political party to run the country on a White Australia policy. Proper, true-believing little flag wavers of the British Empire. That's the Labor Party. We also have what used to be the Country Party, but which sort of went through a bit of a conniption fit and became the National Country Party, and then dropped country from its title, and it calls itself the National Party. And they're actually pretty much in favour of state socialism, as in government subsidies for superphosphate bounties and irrigation subsidies and mining subsidies. So you might as well call them the National Socialist Party, right? And they're the fucking Nazis. And the National Party, they're in favour of if it moves, shoot it. If it doesn't move, chop it down. If you can't get your axe into it, rent the fucking thing out for advertising space, but only if Gelignite won't shift it. Right? That's the National Party. They're the loggers and the miners and the farmers. The Liberal Party, they're the shareholders, investors and employers. The landowners are split between those two bunches. And the Labor Party are the blue-collar workers who just want to be paid a fair wage with a safe workplace, with a month's holidays every year, at a 17.5% holiday leave loading, with a month's sick leave, right? Every year. And, well, they don't really want to provide their own working clothes or tools. They don't really want to think too much. They want to be told what to do so that they can be paid this sum of money, and then when they retire, they'd like to have about 50% of their working wage to retire on. Okay. Now, the leader of the Liberal National Coalition, which is the opposition in Australia at the moment, because there is a de facto coalition between the Labor Party and the Greens and a few independents who chose to vote with the Greens and the Labor Party to give a parliamentary majority to the Labor Party, which has got a Labor Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. First Australian woman to be a Prime Minister. Julia Gillard used to be a lawyer. Tony Abbott was a Rhodes Scholar, and he's the head of the Liberal Party at the moment. He got to be the head of the Liberal Party at the moment when his predecessor, Malcolm Turnbull, who's an investment banker, made a savage mistake with some fraudulent invented evidence which claimed that the previous Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, had indulged in corrupt conduct. That was known as the Godwin Gretsch affair, Ute Gate. What's happened and come to a head today, the last sitting day of Parliament before the Christmas recess, and the politicians aren't going to go and talk to each other again until February. What happened today was that Tony Abbott was given a chance to apologise to the Prime Minister of Australia for alleging, in and out of Parliament, that she had broken the law, that she had given false evidence to a Western Australian corruption inquiry into a slush fund which was used by the Prime Minister's ex-boyfriend, who she was with 20 years ago when she was a lawyer. She helped to set up a corporate entity, an association, which then set up a bank account, and her ex-boyfriend misused the bank account. It's a little bit like a car salesman selling a car to somebody who then fails to make the repayments, goes drink driving and has an accident while breaking the law. Is the car salesperson responsible for the actions of whoever it was they sold the car to? Nobody outside of the Liberal Party and the National Party's extremists thinks that Tony Abbott has a leg to stand on. But today he was given his last chance. He went in there and he failed to apologise, and he failed to put up, and he failed to shut up. So the federal, liberal, neo-conservative, free market party in Australia is about to schism over Christmas. It's about to fly to pieces because their worldview doesn't fit the evidence, and they're still pushing their worldview. Just like Karl Rove, when the election results came in, couldn't cope with the idea that his side had actually lost the election, and he prepared to try and steal it, just like he stole it for Prissy Dunt's shrub, George Bush the Little. So, what else is going on in conservative politics in Australia? Well, in Queensland, Campbell Newman, the extreme fascist Premier of Queensland, he lost three ministers this week, 3 members of Parliament, 3 people who were in the Liberal National Party in Queensland. Last week he only lost 2, so he is disintegrating his party at an accelerating rate. People who have any skerrick of morals or ethics are unable to work with the Liberal National Coalition dictatorship in Queensland. Western Australia is trying to pretend that the mining boom isn't over because China doesn't want to buy anything, because Europe doesn't want to buy anything from China, and America can't afford to buy anything either. In New South Wales, the Liberal state government is still absolutely unable to explain how they pretended to be in debt when they were actually in surplus. They thought they had a $1.2 billion debt deficit, and they've actually got a 0.8 billion surplus. It's pretty sad to watch, really. I was raised to be a Liberal. My father was a Liberal. My father had his own business. You know, my mother sort of swung from being raised in a Labor family to being a Liberal person because she married an old Liberal person with money. But, yeah, it's really sad to watch. And Tony Abbott thinks that winning is the thing. He just spent 2-3 years campaigning on how the sky was going to fall down because of the carbon tax, because he thinks global warming is bullshit. He thinks it's a crock of shit. That's what he said. I recall when Tony Abbott changed tax suddenly without notifying his party room, without notifying his front bench, without clearing it with anybody. He was asked, "Mr. Abbott, why have you taken this sudden step without asking what the caucus thinks, or what the Liberal party room thinks?" It's the Labor Party that has what they call a caucus. And Tony Abbott said a very telling thing. Tony Abbott said, "On any contentious issue, I would much rather apologise afterwards than seek permission beforehand if the permission is not likely to be given." Deconstruct that. Think about it in your head. On any contentious issue, instead of asking permission beforehand, he would rather seek to apologise afterwards. This I put to you, YouTube, Warbles on a Lot subscribers, Australians, my fellow Australians, my global citizens. This represents the ethics and moral stance of a rapist. Instead of asking, can I fuck you, he says afterwards, pretty please forgive me for fucking you without permission. That is the moral and ethical stance of Tony Abbott, and that is why the Liberal Party and the National Party in Australia are in a terminal decline. I'm not fucking joking. He prefers to apologise afterwards. He attended Catholic boarding school. He was a football hero. Did you ever hear Tony Abbott say anything bad about pedophiles in the Catholic system? He was a seminarian. He wanted to be a priest. Tony Abbott, the man with the morals, the manners and the ethics of a rapist who wants to be the prime muppet of my country. Fuck off, Tony Abbott! You and the horse you rode on in. Did I say horse? Maybe I meant whores. Julie Bishop, who spent the last week utilising every question in parliamentary question time to try and fan the flames of your criminal conspiracy fantasy against the Prime Minister of Australia. The person who was able to assemble a majority on the floor of the House of Representatives, and therefore she is the duly elected Prime Minister of Australia. And you, Tony Abbott, are an arse-hole full of farts! That feels so much better out than in. And you know what, Tony Abbott? Under the New South Wales laws against slander, libel and defamation, the truth may not be a defence at law, but public interest is. And you, as a public figure, have no right to sue me for slander, libel and defamation, because I am warning my fellow Australians of what a gutter-sniping scumbag piece of shit you are. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.